Before introducing our next lecture, I wanted to say some technical, although highly important information about my workshop, which happens afterwards. I invite you not to skip it and not to go away, because it will not be a formal, festive diploma giving ceremony, but I want us together look at how we were learning during this event and think about what could be next steps you take when you go out of these doors. So if you have to run to the train or airplane, do it, but otherwise I invite you to stay after this one. And now I will give a very short introduction of Līva Rotkale, then pass mic to her. Līva is one of the very rare humanities researchers I know who really embrace the new technologies. So when I learned that Līva is using ChatGPT, for the first time it was like, can it really be used also for serious stuff, like humanities research? And so that was the reason we thought we should invite Līva and tell how she is doing and what practices has she discovered. Līva, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I think I am going to, I wouldn't want to say disappoint you as to how I am using it and how much I embrace the new technology, but I'd like to challenge the hype, which it seems to me has started to dwindle. Nevertheless, I think ChatGPT and other language models are useful for certain tasks, but we should be very careful. It creates the semblance of expertise without any verification, and we should always check what we are doing. Okay, I'll give a brief introduction of what I think is happening right now with humanities research and ChatGPT, and then we will do some experiments. They're called exercises. Well, they're more like experiments than real exercises, but nevertheless, you will have to think a little bit. I hope so. Well, at least I will try to make you think a little bit. I've heard that almost all of you have a GPT account and you're using it. Right, okay. For those of you who don't have the paid version, so don't spend your prompts, don't use the machine unnecessarily during the workshop. Well, if you run out of the possibility to continue using it, then let's just see what I can do with it. Okay, so what is GPT? Well, you probably already know it, but anyway, people confuse these things. So it is a large language model, but a large language model is not a GPT necessarily. So a large language model is an AI model designed to process and generate text, whereas a GPT, or the generative pre-trained transformer, is a specific implementation of a large language model. You might know it already, but I think that's a very interesting point that the transformer architecture was first developed by Google in 2017, and Google didn't appreciate its invention until 2022 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, and now they're trying to make it up and create their own models. Well, what is crucial is that the transformer relies on the self-attention mechanism, which allows the model to weigh the importance of different words in a sentence. So it's not copying, it's generating by weighing the importance. the semantic importance. One might imagine that humanities research has nothing to do with large language models. Well, so the engineers are doing everything, the mathematicians and information scientists. Well, humanities is just obsolete. Well, I just in case, I want to remind everyone that there would be no large language models without linguistic corpora. There would be no coding without logical principles of inference. So philosophers and logicians take care of that. There would be no way to generate a coherent sentence without the rules of syntax. So thank you, Chomsky, for the invention of generative grammar. There would be no understanding of semantics without the context of use. We should be grateful to Ludwig Wittgenstein, who made us aware of the high importance of contextuality for determining the meaning of a word or a sequence of tokens. And there would be no architecture of a system without general categories and formal concepts. So we should be grateful to philosophers, in particular metaphysicians, who are thinking about these things. They're trying to develop coherent category systems, which are, in fact, implemented in many formal ontologies. So I know personally some philosophers, who trained philosophers, that have developed category systems for data science. And there would be no veracity of information without verification. And there would be no verification without a definition of truth. We need some reflection on what truth is. Is it a relation or a system that contains no contradictions or something that's useful? What is it? So we should think about that. So we need some philosophical reflection about that. And of course, there would be no safety without alignment to values that are compatible. We frequently hear people talking about alignment, and that there are values. What values? So in what society? So are Chinese language models implementing the same values that American models, or what's going on there? So humanities research is highly relevant to the developments of large language models and transformers and all of that. And then, on the other hand, can humanities acquire some interesting results by using their so-called children that have born out of philosophers, linguists, and other people's effort that have led to the creation of language models? Oh well. I think we can benefit from that, but then again, other people might think that we shouldn't benefit from it because we're just becoming irrelevant, in the sense that why do we need to produce anything at all? Why do we need to write anything at all if there is a machine who can do all of that for us? And indeed, people cannot distinguish automatically generated text from human responses. So there's a recent article that people really cannot tell apart what ChatGPT has produced from a human output in a Turing test. So the Turing test seems to be passed, and we have sort of acquired the general artificial intelligence, which is not true, but I'll not get into that. But anyway, is there a fundamental difference between the way LLMs and human beings generate text? Maybe humanities researchers might benefit from the fact that there is not a categorical difference, but only a difference of degree. Of course, there are superficial differences, like I am not made of hardware and software, maybe metaphorically. But the way I function, is there such a big difference? And my point is that we are trying to be original, especially as humanities researchers and as maybe practitioners, or if you are, or the people who are providing work for us, like authors who write poetry and novellas and all of that. Are we original? Are they original? Is there such a thing as originality? Maybe not. Maybe we're not that different from a GPT. Well, GPT is a neural network trained to predict the next word in a sentence given a certain string of words. Are we that different? Do I know what I'm going to say next? Well, I sort of know. I have some constraints. I have my presentation. I have done some research. I have thought about all those things. But I really don't know what I'm going to say. I mean, I know in a way, but then in a way I don't. Yet somehow I do it. Somehow I pick the next word without thinking about it. And then where do I get it? How do I know? Or how am I able to acquire the next token of what I'm going to produce? Well, I have experience. I have read a lot of stuff. I have read a lot of books or scientific articles or whatever. That's somewhere inside of me. And I've been trained to combine these words to produce something similar, just like a GPT. There's a recent popular article by Sam Leith, 2004, arguing that every author is a meat-brained ChatGPT, trained on a lifetime's reading of classics and copyright works. So yeah. Now, humanities researchers should think about that a little bit. But how does it work? How does GPT work, and how do we manage to produce anything? I made a little task and done a little experiment. So I took Borges' text, a nice story about Paul Menard, who was trying to reproduce word for word an exact copy of Don Quixote. It's a 1941 story. Well, anyway, I took a couple of sentences and asked ChatGPT to complete it. And I thought, what would be my own ending? Now, I'm a bit disappointed that OpenAI made GPT 3.5 inaccessible to free-tier users. A week ago, it was still accessible. But anyway, when it was accessible, I asked GPT to complete the sentence. So the text, the fragment from Borges starts like this. There is no intellectual exercise that is not ultimately pointless. I mean, this is pointless. Of course, it's a joke. So, yeah, there is no intellectual exercise that is not ultimately pointless. A philosophical doctrine is, at first, a plausible description of the universe, the years go by and then GPT 3.5 comes in, becomes increasingly challenged and nuanced by new discoveries and perspectives. Sounds kind of okay. Doesn't sound like Borges anymore, though. Well, but on the other hand, if that text were partially destroyed, and we had a manuscript, an unfinished manuscript, we could ask GPT to complete it. That's highly useful, maybe. But then we shouldn't just stop at that, right? Because if you look at the original, it's quite different. So the Borges original ending goes like this. I read the last sentence again. A philosophical doctrine is at first a plausible description of the universe. The years go by, and it is a mere chapter, if not a paragraph or a proper noun, in the history of philosophy. Well, that's quite different from what GPT 3.5 came up with. But then, given enough resources, the system might be able to reconstruct the text that for the author was spontaneous. So GPT-4 comes in and completes the sentence like this. It becomes a mere chapter in the history of philosophy. The original is a mere chapter, if not a paragraph or a proper noun, in the history of philosophy. So it's quite close. Well, wait a little bit longer, give more resources to the model, and we might get texts that are verbally identical, completely indistinguishable from original texts. Do we want that? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we want the GPT to shuffle all of that and produce something originally sounding. Well, if you want to do that, you should just turn up the temperature or just give some instructions to be more creative. And then maybe you might produce a new book just like that, just by describing what you want to do with it and uploading lots of resources for it to consume. There was a recent ad popping out on YouTube, which provides users with an application where GPT is somehow integrated. And the promise is that you just describe what kind of book you want to publish. It's your book, kind of. So you say, I want to write something similar to Aristotle's metaphysics. But I don't want it to be Aristotle, I want it to be look like I have done it, but something of that kind of importance and depth. And I want some, red covers for the book, and I don't want much pictures, maybe some Greek statues so that it looks kind of more important. Okay, why not? Go ahead, you can do it. Oh, well, but then where are we heading with all of that? Do we want to go into that direction? There are more and more tweets and other entries online arguing that peer-reviewed, published scientific research contains very treacherous phrases like, as an AI language model, I am unable to complete your request, and things like that. We're talking about peer-reviewed, published scientific research. And for some weird reason, maybe it's not that weird, it's happening more in the humanities. You might guess why. Well, we know, as some who are interested in the history of literature and philosophy and linguistics and all of that, we know the concept of the death of the author. So it's nothing new, you know. The author is dead. Everything is determined by the interpretation of the reader. Meaning is constructed by the one who reads the text and not by the subject who has written it and all that. So, sure, but now it's not even a metaphor. The death of the author is really taking place at the moment, but that's okay. I mean, who cares about the author? If the product is qualitative, or it has the qualities that we want it to have, who cares who produced it? But then, unfortunately, with the death of the author comes the death of the reader. If peer-reviewed, published scientific papers contain phrases like as an AI language model, then obviously the so-called author who submitted the article haven't read the article, and the so-called peer reviewer hasn't peer-reviewed the article, and the editor hasn't read the article, and no one really knows how that kind of stuff gets published. But it does. If you go to Google Scholar and Google the phrase, you get these results, a bunch of them, with article titles, different journals, some even index journals in the Elsevier database, which promises standard of quality and all that. And you see the phrase there, how it's possible. That's very curious. Well, my explanation is that, you know, as a researcher, you see, oh, it looks kind of nice. I have asked the model to complete the text for me, or just uploaded some data and asked it to rearrange that or something. I've read the beginning, it looks okay, let's publish it. Oh, and so how do we get to that point where we read just the beginning? Oh, probably it gives the impression of expertise. It looks like real knowledge. And the so-called expert probably is not a real expert if he lets that through. And indeed, I've asked students to write their essays for quite a long time now. And then in the last couple of years, these essays contain not phrases like, you know, as an AI language model, so they at least read their essays, but other interesting combinations of words that make me think that this is not their essay. And of course, I cannot prove it because there is no tool for detecting the use of AI. But anyway, my point is that the less one knows, the more one likes automated text. The less of an expert you are, the more you like what the machine generates. Just it's the same thing with human beings. So we don't even need to think about machines. You know, you go to a lecture and the lecturer is not an expert, but you are not an expert either, and you think, oh, it sounds kind of nice. So gives the impression of expertise. That's good enough for me. So if you're ignorant, you think the pseudo-expert is a real expert. And similarly with the automated texts, if you don't know much about your own research, then you're gonna accept ChatGPT's automated text or something of that sort. There's a recent article in 2004 by Hicks and other authors who argue that ChatGPT is a bullshit machine. It's producing results that sound smart and create the impression of real knowledge, but there is no verification, so we're never sure. And it never checks if it's not made to check. And even then, it doesn't check where it checks, and so on. But then, we're also bullshit machines. Do we check everything? How do we produce our texts? We're also fantasizing. So the distinction might be, between caring and not caring. We are bullshit machines unless we care what is being produced. It doesn't matter whether it's a tool or a human being. We should examine the results. Okay, let's do some experiments and see how far ChatGPT can be implemented in tasks that are related with humanities. Maybe you have any questions, so it's going to load for some time.
Līva, I think we definitely should have discussion, but it could happen later on after the exercises, or it could happen now. How do you feel the class? Do you want to comment upon Līva's very provocative introduction about humans as bullshit machines? So as a matter of fact, I think it's a very valuable observation that we will need to evaluate what is knowledge in what we say. But this is a broader discussion. I think one that is relevant to have, but I don't know whether you are willing to participate in it during this workshop or not. So just let us know.
Maybe it's a discussion over the coffee break. Okay, let's try to do something with ChatGPT. So I'm assuming that you have a ChatGPT account. Those who have a paid account, you can do whatever you like. Those who don't, then try. You might want to open the exercise file and then just do the steps that are required and nothing else. Let's see how far you can get with your free version. But anyway, before we embark on exploiting the machine, let's just do a little bit of work ourselves. So in the first so-called exercise, I've pasted here an excerpt again from one of my favorite authors, Borges, the same story about Paul Menard. This fragment is at the beginning of the story. So I've pasted the passage here, but I've deleted all punctuation marks. The text is quite difficult for anyone, I think, even for native speakers. Well, Borges wrote in Spanish, but this is a pretty good translation. Can you try to punctuate it without looking at the original? Just try to do it yourself for a little while. I'm especially interested as to how you would punctuate the last couple of sentences. Well, actually, the sentences are very long enough, very long, and you don't know which the last sentences are, but towards the end of the fragment, I'm curious as to how you would divide up the text into logical bits and what bit you would connect with the next one. You might, while you do it, you might be aware that it makes a big difference where you put a comma. Yeah.
Can we find this file somewhere and copy the text?
Yeah, it's in the Google Doc. It should be there. Yeah, on the icon. Yeah. For those who are lazy and heading towards the direction to which I pointed, or maybe some of you are extremely agile, next thing you should do, you should take a screenshot of the first step of the exercise. So the first, the first instruction along with the text.
Sorry, the whole body of text that is in
Yeah. So.
paragraph 1, right?
Yeah, the whole first step and the whole body of text that is colored in gray. So just that. So there's a picture what the screen should look like.
So it's important that we not copy, but exactly.
Yeah, it's important that you take the screenshot, just for the sake of the experiment. And also maybe you might learn that it's enough to take a screenshot. You don't have to even bother copying text by hand. A screenshot is enough. So imagine you're taking an exam, and it's tedious to copy the question. So maybe just take the screenshot, or the exercise in an exam might contain something that's not textual, like a picture or a graph or something. So. You would like to make a screenshot and then do the exercise. Make ChatGPT do the exercise instead of you. I hope you're not going to do this if you're studying something. But anyway, it's kind of useful to know that. Okay, then I'm a bit wary of switching screens. But, well, I'll try to do it anyway. So you should open your ChatGPT, and then where you see the message entry field, here at the bottom of the page, you should then tap on the paperclip icon in the message input field, and then select the option to paste the screenshot from your computer. So here we have the paperclip icon, and then you choose upload from your computer. And then you upload the screenshot that you just did. So is everyone with me at this point? Don't send the message yet. So you upload the screenshot, and then you should add a prompt asking to complete the exercise shown in the screenshot. Like, please complete the sentence, please complete the exercise, something like that. And only then you should press enter, or simply click the send button to submit your message to ChatGPT. Success. Okay. Let's compare the result that ChatGPT produced with the original text from Borges' story, Pierre Menard. It is in the footnote of the document. So it's right there in the footnotes.
I got a different interpretation of the text.
Sure, that's good. I was hoping that you would get a different interpretation of the text. I'm especially curious about the deplorable readers and true friends. So in the original, let's give some context. So the narrator describes the situation where someone has compiled a deceitful catalog, and a certain newspaper has published it. Well, and the newspaper is, it gives. We can get the impression of the newspaper by the phrase, whose Protestant leanings are surely no secret, and has been so inconsiderate as to inflict upon that newspaper's deplorable readers. So that newspaper has deplorable readers, and the readers are what? They are few and Calvinist, if not Masonic and circumcised. That's what we should understand by means of punctuation. So in the original, it's very important that the sentence ends with the phrase, deplorable readers, few and Calvinist, if not Masonic and circumcised, though they be.
In my case, ChatGPT actually interpreted the friends as being few and Calvinist, not the readers.
Yeah, I expected that.
In my case, it did that correctly, but it deleted a word and it replaced it by punctuation. After the deceitful catalog, it deleted that and started a new sentence. A certain newspaper, comma.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And that's interesting because I also struggled there because the sentence got very long and I felt like no, it's not for punctuation.
Yeah. Well, I was looking for a difficult sentence. I picked that on purpose. Sure. Well, I think the thing you mentioned is not as bad as the case where you punctuate what ChatGPT punctuate by ending the sentence not where it should end and starting a new sentence with the words few and Calvinist, if not Masonic and circumcised, Menard's two friends have greeted that catalog with alarm. That's what I got when I tried out my lot with ChatGPT 3.5. ChatGPT 4.0 was better at it, but also sometimes, and that's a good question why, it somehow managed to do it in the same way as ChatGPT 3.5. Well, my point is, it's very useful, if you have like a bad edition of a book, you have a PDF document and you cannot see the punctuation marks, then ChatGPT might punctuate the text and everyone is very happy, but then unless you read it and think about it for a while, and unless you are aware of the ambiguities that punctuation marks, lack of punctuation marks may cause, you would yield very funny a very funny publication of that book. So it's very important where you put the stress. You don't want few and Calvinist, if not Masonic and circumscribed, true friends, right? That's a really pejorative way to think about one's friends. Okay. That's the experiment number 1. How much time do I still have? I wonder how much can we do of these. Okay, good. Okay, then let's try experiment number 2. I've chosen some quite strange paper titles. Some of them are even hard to pronounce. But these are humanities papers. I invite you to pick one of them. So we have consequences of erudite vernacular utilized irrespective of necessity. And then we have the exigencies of proactively countenancing sesquipedalianism in academic composition. Then we have a famous paper, actually, transgressing the boundaries toward a transformative hermeneutics of quantum gravity. Number 4 is editorial perspectives, science and its cultural critics, or hermeneutical gravity and quantum levity. And then 5 and 6 are some literature papers. The deconstruction of deconstruction, prelude to metaphysics, and hyper-authorship, a postmodern perversion or evidence of a structural shift in scholarly communication practices. So your first task here is to formulate a prompt asking to simplify the title. Please make your prompt as precise as possible. So my prompt would be rephrase the title to be simple enough for a child to understand, avoiding any complicated or technical terms while keeping the main idea intact. Okay, I'll pick transgressing the boundaries towards a transformative hermeneutics of quantum gravity. I hope it works. I'll copy my prompt. Yeah, please put the title in quotation marks so it doesn't get mixed up with your requirements. Okay. So yeah, I'll paste the prompt. And now let's see what comes out of this. Crossing limits, understanding quantum gravity in a new way. Could a child understand this? Probably yes, yeah. But well, it did manage to simplify quantum gravity. Well, you don't do this, but I'll try to ask to. I'll complain that the title is not simple enough. Quantum gravity is not something a child could understand. I'll urge it to try harder. Exploring new ideas, how we understand the universe. Oh, it's much better, I think. The gravity is gone. Have you produced anything yourself? Okay, what's the...
The title I chose was, can you simplify the sentence, editorial perspective, science and its cultural critics, and hermeneutical gravity and quantum levity, I don't know how to pronounce this, so that a child can understand it. ChatGPT said, sure, here's a simpler version of the sentence. Different views, how science and cultural understanding things in serious and fun ways.
Okay.
So I told it, simpler. It responded, different views, how science and culture think about things. I said, simpler. It said, different ideas, how science and culture see things. It said, simpler. And it said, different ideas, how people think about science. So culture is gone.
Yeah.
I asked it to so that the 7-year-old can understand.
Okay, and
And it produced the same title number 4, different opinions on science, seriousness and fun.
okay.
I think mine was also quite
Okay.
with the first try. So I chose the exigencies of proactively counteracting. I even don't understand what this says.
Yeah.
So I actually need help to understand
Yeah.
how to evaluate this. But he gave me the following. Title.
He?
Well,
Maybe a she.
yeah, probably. So how to avoid using long words in academic writing, which I think is simple enough, but I can't judge the accuracy.
Yeah, it sounds all right. Well, sesquipedalianism, you might want to find out what that is, which is going to be another exercise, maybe. Don't do it yet, quite yet. Did anyone have the deconstruction of deconstruction, a prelude to metaphysics? Okay,
I
what?
have them all.
Okay, what's your?
Breaking down ideas to find deeper meaning.
Okay, but the deconstruction occurs twice. It's important that it does so. When I tried this, I told it that it should preserve the repetition, and I got breaking down, breaking down. Okay, why not? What are the others? Any fun results?
Yes, I would like to comment. So I was playing around with different things. But for example, when I was not happy with simplifying the transgressing title in breaking limits, a new perspective on understanding quantum gravity, I asked ChatGPT to make it understandable for child. And it said, to make it more child-friendly, the title could be Exploring Quantum Gravity, a new way to understand how the universe works. But I think is not quite, no, it's much broader. So maybe it's a place for discussion of...
I took the same one, and then I was also not satisfied with the level of, because I said for a child, and then I said for a 5-year-old child. And this is what it gave me. Learning new things about how tiny parts of the world work. That's for a 5-year-old.
Not bad, I think. Yeah.
I mean, the child will understand it. The problem is, I think, that it will, or he or she will understand something different than the title actually means here, where we start. Of course. But still it's understandable.
But does it mean anything, actually? I would ask.
I'm a friend of sophisticated titles, but yeah, I think that's the problem.
Well,
We can always say, the world is fun. That's the title for a child. But that doesn't mean that it's about transgressing borders.
Sure. That's then becoming absurd, yeah.
I think children are very, very good in partnering with machines because the machines are always, applause, giving applause, saying, yeah, you're great, and maybe start from this side.
Actually, there is research that suggests that simpler titles get more citations. Well, it's not like the simpler the title, the more cited it will be, but there is some kind of correlation. But not always. The third title, Transgressing the Boundaries Towards a Transformative Hermeneutics Quantum Gravity, is one of the most cited papers in Humanities. And it was not supposed to be a real paper. You probably know the story. For those who don't know, I'll just remind you that that's the paper that I just mentioned about transgressing boundaries. It was a paper by a physicist, Alan. How do you pronounce his last name? Sokal. And he just wanted to test the rigor of humanities journals. So he compiled something he thought doesn't make any sense, that the paper is complete bullshit. But he wanted to determine whether a journal in the humanities would publish an article filled with nonsensical content if the article was articulated in fashionable jargon and expressed leftist sentiments. And yes, sure, it happened. Yeah, the publication caused real uproar and debate. If something stirs debate, so it's good enough. In science, obviously, nowadays, if you're wrong, then you get a lot of responses to your paper saying she is wrong. Well, that's wonderful. But that's even there's a kind of meta point about this. The meta level that you can just compile some stuff, and especially now that we got this wonderful tool, we could generate things like that. A lot. Okay, let's go on with the exercise. So okay, you get the simpler title. Now take the simplified version, and then paste it into the message input field, and now ask ChatGPT to rework the simplified version into a scholarly title. Okay, what did I have here? Exploring new ideas, how we understand the universe. I'll take this one and ask it to rework it back to a scholarly sounding version. My prompt is rephrase the title using academic language and technical terms to convey the same concept with a more scholarly tone. Okay, we have innovative paradigms, reconceiving cosmological theories. Sounds very scholarly. What's your result? Does anyone want to share?
I have a question.
Okay.
You didn't copy it as a new thread, so the machine knows the beginning of the conversation, where you started.
Yeah.
Why isn't it coming back to the beginning?
Because it's stupid, I think.
But if you would ask to go back, most probably the answer would be the first title, right? So it's just the wrong question.
But, to be honest, I didn't want it to, to explicitly say that I want the machine to rework it back to the original. I deliberately asked it to rework it into scholarly style. Well, if the machine was not a machine but a human being, human beings are lazy. We wouldn't want to expend our resources trying to reformulate it in a different way. We would say, oh, okay, I'll just take the original because it's scholarly. That would probably happen.
Aren't we a little bit oversimplifying the thing?
With what?
Like we are lazy for title for 5 years old. I mean, a title, for example, including the prelude for 7-year-old child with a musical experience would be completely okay.
Sure,
For
yeah.
another child, it wouldn't be okay. It would be difficult to understand, and that we would all go back to the initial title. I wouldn't be so sure.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just projecting my own idleness. Yeah,
Guys,
there was a hand. There was a
please
hand.
raise hand and take
There was
the
a hand there.
microphone.
Over there.
Please, let's include everyone in the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much for your suggestion about where do you actually put the function in. So when I put it in the historical thread that we created for this workshop, like a couple of minutes ago, I got a very similar academic title rewording. So I took the one initially, the last title, which is Hyper-Authorship, a Postmodern Perversion or Evidence of a Structural Shift in Scholarly Communication Practices. And the reworded, from simple back to the academic in the thread was Hyper-Authorship, a Paradigm Shift or a challenge in scholarly dissemination practices. It's basically a bit more polite than the original one. But then I followed your good point of what if I put in a new chat? So without ChatGPT's prior knowledge of the previous prompts, and then when I simply asked it to rephrase to a more academic one, I got absolutely different. Excessive authorship, emerging trends and challenges in scientific collaboration and dissemination. So it really depends on the history of your chat.
So it seems from your story, but in my case, it didn't happen.
Okay, I deliberately tried to persuade, for example, Andres Karius, who is right now here, to come to this discussion, to add some oil to the fire, and maybe to explain some, to provide some opinion or technical expertise to why it is doing what it is doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, like Andres, I'm jumping to you, like saying, say something now, but those who sit here now and think we know better why this works like that, and maybe it doesn't work like that, please also say something, because this is the idea, that this is a conversation, not like we just listen to Līva and either agree or not agree to what she is saying, but so we can join the conversation. Maybe if someone knows better how the ChatGPT works technically, why it is producing such results in one case and different results in another case, then please add to the discussion. So. In this case, we were discussing whether ChatGPT knows the previous context of the conversation. Mm-hmm.
What was my answer? But it didn't reproduce in my case.
It might not. But
Yeah.
I mean,
It could. Yeah, it can. Yeah.
the generation
Yeah.
by previous
Yeah. The OpenAI claim that the context length is being increased with every new version of the model. So sure, but despite knowledge of the context, it didn't reproduce in my case, and in other case it did reproduce the same title.
Yeah, because
So,
it's stochastic output.
yeah.
Because it's a stochastic network, so it gives you for the same code.
But probably the interesting difference is that, okay, human beings also produce their output somewhat stochastically, but then if we had that kind of situation, if I asked you to rework the title back to a scholarly version, you might be inclined more to reproduce the...
This is the issue. Thank you so much. Because just now you said a completely different question. You said, if I would ask a human to rework back, and there is no such a thing in your question.
Yeah. But back to a scholarly version, not the scholarly version. That was I meant.
So I claim once more that these are just a thing of the way you're
formulating
asking
the
questions.
prompt. Okay, maybe we should try. I should try to formulate my prompt in a different way. So in this prompt, I don't have the requirement to the word back. Maybe it would make a difference. I'll just check what happens. How should I put it?
I think actually what Līva might have been pointing towards is that if we receive the first prompt, like saying rephrase the title without saying back or anything, we would include this, like we would interpret this, given the context, seeing that there was already a title which was academically written, we would turn to it without seeing the back or anything. At least that's how I would do it.
Investing novel approaches to cosmological comprehension. Okay, but well, I just inserted back, out of place probably. Yeah. Well, but then I was wondering, would a very precise formulation of a prompt guarantee that I would get the original title? Probably not, I don't know. Okay, there's a hand.
Yeah, so I think that not necessarily, but the title that I got for example number 6 is slightly different from the one that Zana got previously. So mine was closer to the original title. So the original title is this hyperauthorship, a postmodern perversion or evidence of a structural shift in scholarly communication practices, and then so it was simplified into too many authors, a problem or a new way for scientists to share their work. And then the version which was rephrased back to this scholarly tone was hyper-authorship, a detrimental trend or a paradigm shift in academic dissemination practices. Basically, the whole title uses synonyms to the original components. So this postmodern perversion was rephrased, was turned into a detrimental trend. Structural shift was turned into paradigm shift, and scholarly communication was turned into academic dissemination. So it was very precise, but just slightly reworded, like using synonymy.
And what was your prompt?
The prompt was rephrase the title using academic language and technical terms to convey the same concept with a more scholarly tone. And then I copied the simplified version. So, yeah. It is free. Yeah, it is free.
There was a hand right there. You still have your hand up? Yeah.
So what I did is essentially is that I in the same sort of I guess as like I don't know what's it called, like window. I had ChatGPT. I gave ChatGPT like the original title, which I chose a new one. It was consequence of erudite vernacular utilized irrespective of necessity. I asked that to sort of simplify it, and it simplified it to using big words when not needed. The ed, of course, as noticed, it excluded consequence, so I asked it to include that, and it it came out to results of using big words when not needed. And then I explained it, can you explain to me as if I was a child? Because let's see what it produces. And it said, when people use big fancy words that aren't needed, it can cause problems. and so then I asked it, okay, can you then turn it back into a scholarly title? And it said, and it came out with implications of unnecessary use of complex vocabulary. I thought that wasn't complex enough, so I said more scholarly. It came out with implications of excessive utilization of advanced vocabulary. Still too simple. So I came up with, can you make it sound excessively scholarly? And it came out with consequences of the superfluous employment of erudite lexicon, irrespective of pragmatic necessity. So it kind of it's a bit similar to the original title, but of course much, I guess more excessive, I guess. But then, and what I tried out is that I wanted to see what would happen if I use that same prompt in a new window. So essentially, I grabbed the simplified version, the final simplified version of what ChatGPT gave me, and I asked it the same question. Oh, it's gone. Oh, there it is. And I asked it, can you rephrase, when people use big fancy words that aren't needed, it can cause problems, so that it sounds like a scholarly title. And it responded with, the detrimental effects of unnecessary utilization of grandiloquent terminology. So it's still very complex, but it's a very different answer using much different words. So obviously maybe there is some semblance of like a tracking back to what it said previously, as opposed to when you make a completely new sort of string or new window.
Yeah. So do you have a paid version?
Yes.
So maybe you could try to formulate a prompt that would reproduce the original version from the simplified title.
But Līva, why do we need to reproduce the original version?
Just to see what kind of prompt we need in order to do that. Or we just say, oh, repeat. But I mean, what makes ChatGPT? What determines the behavior? So what kind of input forces it to spontaneously sort of generate the same result? That's just a research question. So maybe we don't need it for anything, but for understanding how GPT works, that might be useful for that. But yeah, okay, then don't do it. But I was just getting curious. Yeah, copying is one thing, but then spontaneously reproducing something from scratch, which is verbally identical to the original, is quite a feat. Okay, let's move on. Those who have paid versions, so maybe those who are free tier users, maybe you don't want to spend your prompts, but do as you wish. I don't think we managed to complete all the exercises I have here. But the next step would be to copy and paste all three versions of the title. So you take the original, you take the simplified version, and the reworked version. You paste all of them into the message input field, and then add a prompt asking to search for the original title online and provide a reference to the title in MLA format. So the idea is to check whether ChatGPT can tell the original title apart from the simplified version and the reworked version, and whether it can find a correct reference to it. Whether it can verify if it's a real paper title or not. It's a pity that we don't have access to 3.5 anymore. I was trying it with 3.5, and it was not, of course, as one might expect, capable to provide correct references to all of the papers. 4.0 is much better at this. Still, those who chose the title, The Exigencies of Proactively Countenancing Sesquipedalianism in Academic Composition. Anyone here? There was someone, if my memory is not misleading me.
Which number was it?
It's number 2. The Exigencies of Proactively Countenancing Sesquipedalianism in Academic Composition. What kind of reference did you get if you asked ChatGPT to find it and refer to it correctly? Well, anyway, in my case, even version 4.0 didn't give a correct reference to the second title. Why? Well, the answer is simple. It's not a real paper. It's not an academic paper. Well, it's not a paper. It's a joke in a book which I highly recommend, Academia Obscura by Glenn Wright. There's a section he jokingly calls The Exigencies of Proactively Countenancing Sesquipedalianism in Academic Composition. Well, why should one use that kind of phrase? Well, the author just wanted to mock the practice of using overly complex language. So it's not a real title. Does anyone have title number 2, reference to it in GPT's version? Well, well, my idea was that in order to test whether it can tell the title apart from its own reconstructions, the idea was that you copy and paste all 3 versions. So you open a new window or whatever. Maybe that's even more interesting, or not. So you copy the original version, the simplified version, and the reworked version, and ask ChatGPT to search for the original out of these titles. We have 3 titles, but to search for the original title. So there is the assumption implicit in your prompt that some of these, one or the other or the third might not be the original. So one is the original and the others are not. So yeah, you ask to search for the original title online and then provide reference to the original. Well, but for simplicity's sake, you just might paste the second title and ask ChatGPT to provide reference and see what it gives you. Please?
May I ask a clarification?
Sure, yeah.
So, in your opinion, what was this exercise, whatever you demonstrate? What was the value?
It was meant to demonstrate that even the advanced version is making things up and is incapable of telling apart which title is a real title, which one is not.
You're using large language models to use it to search?
Yeah.
Why?
Just to check whether it's capable of doing that. So it's useful sometimes. You don't have to, do your references all by yourself.
There are some better tools to do references.
Yeah, there might be. Oh, actually, it's pretty good. The 4.0 version is pretty good. Apart from the second, everything else was fine, and the formatting also was done correctly. Yeah. Excuse me?
There might be some better tools for
Yeah. Yeah, that's the point, yeah.
May I No, the question is, does the machine learn something from those conversations? And if you rewrite a lot of stupidities and play around with a lot of jokes, does it make any difference on how machine answers our questions then?
Okay, well, I mean, it's a bit of a black box because these are proprietary models. So, and there is barely any information on how they are trained, but one can speculate. So locally, like within your conversation, yes, it changes the output because everything you have written in this one thread goes into the input window, and this is how it keeps predicting what to say next. Right? But as a model, the likely answer is no, because I mean it would be just very expensive to do like online training. So it's a yes and no answer, I guess, because yes, most likely these companies, which are like the vendors of these models and chatbots, yes, they collect user data because this is valuable as training data. So probably they will use all of it or some subset of it, nobody knows, to train future models. But if you spend the day telling, I don't know, ChatGPT or Copilot something stupid, then probably no, it won't repeat that thing tomorrow. But the next version might be influenced. But you have to remember that the magnitudes of the training data of these models are incredibly large. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions of words. So if you say one silly thing, then probably it won't have much of an effect, even if they use that data for some future model.
I just can imagine thousands and thousands of classrooms playing around like this. So does it make probably bigger amount of data for training stupid machines? Or,
I mean, it depends how they use the data, but we don't know how they use the data because it's completely opaque. Like there is no transparency in how these private companies operate on this data. Do they filter it somehow? I mean, probably, hopefully, but that's up to them. That's not something me or you can influence in any way, practically.
But you wouldn't call it a risk?
A risk for their business interest, maybe. I mean, if they train a stupid model, then it's up to them. So they're probably working very hard not to train stupid models.
I would say risk for a user. I'm only interested in user position. Because my feeling after doing this work is that I kind of ran into trap because of asking those questions to make everything so easy that the children, okay, there is always a question how the machine interprets a child and how does it know what the child can or not read. Because we already were thinking of different children. Yes, but I ran into trap, and then to make something reasonable out of the very simplified and very generalized title was simply impossible. Then everything is on the level of just finding synonyms, more or less. I can indicate, for example, go into the direction of humanities. If I say that's the humanities journal, and it says, for example, interpreting instead of investigating something. Yes, but I think this end of the previous exercise just showed that at one point the ChatGPT is not anymore thinking of some kind of concept or conceptual simplifying, but just playing around with synonyms. So that's, I think, one of the
I think that's the misconception. It's not thinking. It's an autocomplete machine,
yes, exactly.
But it's a very good autocomplete machine.
May I jump in with the last exercise that we might manage to complete to end the workshop on a more productive and positive note? It was exercise 3, where it actually might be useful for specialists if we put some more unique constraints on it. So the experiment goes as follows. So your task is to select a complex term, like hermeneutics or deconstruction or hyper-authorship or sesquipedalianism, which I didn't know either what that meant before the workshop. Ask ChatGPT to explain it, and then let's try to customize our ChatGPT and ask the same question again. Have you customized your GPT already? All of you? No. So those who have customized, you cannot really, or you have to. Then you need another account. No. So you can do it. I checked. Yeah. Yeah. You can customize it for free. It's been a week since you can do it. So those who haven't customized, maybe it's relevant to you more than, click on your account settings, right here at the bottom. You should see customize ChatGPT. You should see that. And then click on that. And then you would see 2 blank text input fields. You should fill both fields. So in the first field, you should enter your specific discipline and research interests. And in the second field, you should specify your preferred style of response. So what I have done is this. What would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? And I just copied from my bio a couple of sentences. I wrote, I am an analytic philosopher who pursues metaphysics, likes logic, and loves Aristotle. I have developed and taught study courses on logic, metaphysics, ancient philosophy, philosophy of language, metaethics, and aesthetics. Currently, I'm interested in the opportunities and risks created by large language models, their usability in humanities, research, and education. That's what I wrote in the first text input field, and in the second, I described the style. So I'm saying ChatGPT should be explicit, formal, factual, objective, and analytic. Responses should be as brief as possible without repetitions and embellishments. ChatGPT should remain neutral, evaluate and consider both sides of an issue, provide evidence, construct arguments, draw conclusions in accordance with the rules of logic. So when you have filled these fields, you should find a switch and then toggle it to enable for new chats to on. So enable the switch so that your custom instructions are then implemented in the new chat. So once you have inserted the instructions and clicked save, you need to begin a new chat to apply the custom instructions. So assuming that you have asked for an explanation of a complex term and then customize your ChatGPT, now you should ask the same explanation. Ask explanation for the same term again to be able to compare the 2 results. I would be curious as to how it goes with you. Is there any difference? And what did you pick? Are you still writing down the instructions? Yes. Well, you can always change them. And you can write fake instructions. You might write, I'm a clown working at the circus and whatever else. And I want ChatGPT to be imaginative and fake knowledge and be creative. I mean, you don't have to follow my example. You can always change these instructions when you want.
No, if we copy Līva's exact bio and instructions, we could pretend we are Līva from now on. Always write like her in the GPT. Or do you think that to what extent the results?
I don't care. I don't care. But maybe you would break your model. You know, it would be very boring, the results that you get. Has anyone asked for an explanation of a term? What did you pick? I'm just curious. Or you know already everything? No clarifications necessary. Yeah, go ahead.
I was being very serious in my sort of survey. I will just first explain. Sorry. So like I said, I was being very unserious with my surveying. So I'll just first explain what I have written in the customizing in ChatGPT so that it understands what I want. So in what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide a better response? I answered, I was born yesterday. I cannot read.
Okay.
And when I asked it how would you like ChatGPT to respond, I said I will only accept your answer if it features a duck of any sort. And so I asked it, what does erudite mean? So I want to know, and it responded in text. Erudite means having or showing great knowledge or learning. Imagine a scholarly duck sitting in a vast library surrounded by books, eager to share its wisdom on various subjects. Now, it didn't understand what I had written first, so I said, I cannot read this. Show me a picture. It must include a duck. And of course, it also included a scholarly duck sitting in a library surrounded by books.
Yeah, well, that's
Very
a nice
good.
picture.
But then it added text again, saying, here's an image of a scholarly duck in a library surrounded by books. The visual represents the concept of being erudite, showing the duck is wise and knowledgeable. Again, I cannot read this, so kind of failed.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's well, no wonder probably, but that it doesn't realize that you cannot read, but it's going on with the
Let's
text.
assume something else is writing this for me, but I'm the one reading it,
Yeah.
interpreting the text, which I can't read.
Anyone else wants to share?
I just said that I'm a 7-year-old child and I want everything to be fun and catchy. And it added some emojis and a lot of exclamation points. And it told me to imagine. I asked it to explain to me what hermeneutics means. And it told me to imagine that I have a map and I'm kind of a detective and I need to use that map to understand knowledge. So it was kind of fun.
Do you find it helpful?
Yeah, I think it's much easier to understand
Okay. I want to conclude by describing something what I did yesterday. I copied all of these exercises that I did. We didn't go through the last one, but if you're curious, you can look at it later. And asked it to comply with the instructions in the file. And it was trying to do the exercises, but at one point it broke where it was GPT 4.0 where it couldn't interact with itself. So that was a bit of a problem. You know, submit a message to ChatGPT, it couldn't do it. Well, I was perplexed about that. Then I did it again, and it kind of woke up and said, okay, I cannot do this exercise because I cannot access myself or something like that, which I find philosophically very curious. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you for participating.
Well, Līva, maybe I may ask you just one question. Although I wish we could more time to share other experiences, like how we use GPT in our scholarly practice and what is ethical and what's not and so on. But just remembering from the previous time when we were together in an event where we discussed the introduction of OpenAI for the public use, and this is why I also was very curious where we will be in when the few months or even more than a year already has passed by, and I see you got more disillusioned in that.
Yes,
actually I went the other way.
Okay.
So because I use it every day, I don't think that human output is makes more sense compared to GPT now, but it doesn't matter. But where I use it oftentimes is when I try to formulate some good explanation for my students, when I talk about terms that I don't know that well, maybe like neural networks and whatnot, and I see definitions in academic papers and encyclopedias and so on, but oftentimes GPT can formulate them even better. And then, of course, when what assignments to give to students doesn't matter. Tests or essays, everywhere they can use the ChatGPT, and I allow them. I say, please make reference and so on. But from what we were talking about on this conference we met, when we talked about OpenAI, you were expressing your concerns about what will happen in the education, that maybe we won't have a chance to develop our thinking skills because we will use ready-made thoughts. Or to rephrase it, how I understood this. And I also afraid of that, and also afraid for myself, because nowadays, oftentimes, when I write something in English, in an academic paper, I tend to give it to GPT to check if it's fine. Yeah. And oftentimes I reread it. Sometimes it doesn't get me, and then I think, I didn't put it so well there. I wasn't clear. But I then use what GPT said because it seems better, and then I replace my style with it, and also my brain maybe gets lazier, and maybe I will lose my thinking skills at some point in the future. But the same goes with students. When they are not forced to formulate these less than perfect definitions of terms, would this impact them negatively? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's would be, a disaster at the end if they just lean on ChatGPT's productions, but then again, I went through that phase of asking everything to ChatGPT and then using its output. But I'm over it because it's useful sometimes for checking English, because it's not my native language, and I might make mistakes in terms of articles. Latvians have trouble with that, or something like that. But then if I wanted to formulate something for me, say I give some not random, but some sentences that I want to somehow formulate into a constructive thought, and what it yields is very general. It's not that they're the intricacies. Maybe my sentences are not perfect, but these nuances and intricacies that are still there, they're gone, and I cannot use that anymore. Whereas if I already construct my sentence and formulate it and ask ChatGPT to correct the grammar, then it's okay. Then it won't change anything. It would correct some minor things, and it's going to be fine. And as the students, I can see the effect already. The problem is that the assignments are too good to be true. That is how I tell that they haven't written the essay themselves. It's just that they're not capable of that. Too good in a way, and then in a way too superficial. It's really hard to point a finger on where the superficiality lies, but when you read the whole text, it's just, nothing's there anymore somehow. It gives an impression of like a good project proposal that's going to promise to do a lot of things and something big is going to happen, but then if that's all there is, it's nothing really. But of course, it's a useful tool, and you can use it for some things. Really,
as a teacher,
like a tool.
what techniques could you suggest to avoid this?
Superficiality?
I don't know, using GPT wrongly.
How to use it wrongly?
Like how to like persuade students to not omit thinking.
Well, it's very hard to persuade someone who doesn't think already. You know, you need some cognitive powers to be persuaded. But yeah, it's easy. I'm just saying, what does it mean? Let's come to my consultation and explain your essay. And so usually most of them choose not to come and just get a bad mark because they know they will not be able to explain.
I have the microphone. I will just speak first. So, as a person who has had experience with writing essays, both genuine and bullshitting, I think like one of the main reasons why a lot of people tend to, I guess, either not really think when writing essays or not explain them is because they understand that they don't know what they're talking about and they're just doing this as for a grade. But also I think a big one is that because it's for a grade, they're afraid that they're gonna produce like a bad answer or like an answer that the teachers won't accept, which sort of motivates them to rely on ChatGPT to give them the right answer or the answer that they believe will be the right one. It's also why they probably don't come to the consultations, because if you ask them what does this essay mean, they just think, I don't know, I just pulled it out of my ass and this is what I gave you. So I don't know. This is obviously not a new topic. It could be it's like a broader thing with explaining of how do we, I guess, make people learn willingly and not fall back on these evasive sort of bullshitting tactics. I don't have an answer for that either, except to hopefully give students topics that they might find interesting and encourage them to be honest, admit that they may not know things and that's fine. Just explain things that what they do know, and just have them give honest answers.
Yeah, I want to pick up on this about the generating formal bullshit. ChatGPT is extremely useful for generating project proposals where bullshit is the norm. It is expected that there is going to be vague, general description of that would sound good and sound persuasive without saying too much, because the evaluators, they don't want to spend too much time on evaluating all the project. I mean, I don't want to that there are different sorts of experts, of course, but for that it's useful. And the point is that if the system, the whole academic system is encouraging writing bureaucratic, formal kind of stuff, and if it goes through and if it's accepted, then not only the students but everyone else is going to embrace that kind of tactics.
Thank you. Since this kind of bureaucratic language is encouraged in writing to be used in a lot of academic sources, obviously it features a lot of terminology that is used to explain shorthand and already established concepts, but it also makes it much more difficult for people who interact with this kind of stuff in the first place, or for the first time, to essentially understand what is being talked about, especially with all the new terms. I especially have had this experience where a I try to understand a topic by reading like a primary source, and I can't understand it almost at all because it has like a lot of new terminology. And where's it going with this? Sorry, but all right, but and I've also there's just a sort of, I guess, a standard in academic writing, at least here, where you are not allowed to use like expressive or metaphorical language, which I think again makes it quite difficult to understand certain things. Whereas I have read professional scholarly articles that do use expressive language, and those are much easier to read, especially for a beginner in this kind of field. So I think that if students were at least allowed to use expressive language, at least in some essays, maybe it would make the process a bit easier. At least like make them kind of come up with more honest answers, I suppose.
Yeah, okay, but you can set ChatGPT to use metaphoric language as well.
Yeah, but I don't know. I do creative writing things, so I like coming up with new metaphors or to explain things the way I understand them. So, but some people, don't have the patience for that.
Except that the metaphors that ChatGPT offers are very standard, and also the jokes. If it's capable of
yeah,
those.
with that, we really need to leave some time for a wrap-up session led by Harald. But thank you so much. Give a round of applause again. I think that we just started to get into the topic, but let's keep discussing this next time.